What's up? I'm Sam Maxon, aka Slam and Sam. I'm a DJ, actor, philanthropist, self-proclaimed Renaissance man. When I'm not in the studio, I'm diving into my hobbies and exploring many interests. With that comes my personal uncensored insights on anything and everything. Are you ready for it? This is The Slam Show.
Hey, hello everyone. My name is Alex Brumfield from The Slam Show here. And basically, I'm taking over for today as a host. And my co-host today that's going to be helping me today is Lisa Churchward from the Churchward Pub.
Hello, thank you. Welcome
Right here in Alameda. And we also are joined by our special guest today from the Haunted Bay. Please give a round of applause for Ying Liu.
Hi.
And first things that we're going to be talking about on the show today, basically we want to start off kind of just with what happened we did on our weekend. So really quick, I'm just going to go down the list of what I did on my weekend. It was pretty simple. I went to a wrestling event. So I just kind of went to my friend's wrestling event. His name's Rick Luxury, and he helped with a promotion. It's called WWZ, and it's called Critical Carnage or something. Like they had like a little event, just the Boys and Girls Club. They kind of put it on for the kids. It was a kind of fun environment. I just went there just to show some support. But I brought my DSLR. I can't just
you gotta take photos.
Take photos. But I'm also like a big wrestling fan, so sometimes I'm like taking photos, and I'm like, I know. But then I'm also into wrestling, so I'm like, oh, that's a good move. Oh, I need to take photos. What am I doing? I need to do one thing at a time. But essentially, that's what I just did. I just went to an event. Lisa, what did you end up?
Well, I was working this weekend. It was last week being the holiday was extremely long. It was the night before Thanksgiving on Wednesday, which is the biggest holiday in the bar world. Everyone comes out and hangs out that night. And then Thursday, the holiday, and bam, the weekend. And so then this weekend that just happened was a little bit more mellow. That was nice. So I stayed home on Saturday. Okay. That was my big to do on the weekend.
Yeah.
Well, I ran a ghost tour fundraiser for my video series, so that was the highlight of my weekend.
Where did you guys go?
We went to several haunted places in North Beach and the Chinatown area. That was last night, and it was pretty fun.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Did you guys get any hits?
Well, several people thought they felt spirits in every place. At one point, I put up a thermal camera towards some place where people have sensed spirits before, and several guests thought that they actually saw the figure of someone in the thermal video. Nice. Yeah, I'm not sure, but they thought so.
Well, we were talking before the show. We were just getting an idea of how the show's going to go. But we were talking about presences and feelings. So let's go ahead and jump into that real quick. Just that we were talking about briefly earlier about you've been on several ghost tours and things, and just talk about your experiences, and then Lisa also talk about yours afterwards about experiences, presences, or what you felt, and are you skeptical to some of it or no? Like when the feelings, when you go into looking for something, at a haunted location.
Well, yeah, we have to keep a balance. We don't want to just assume that every little anomaly or every little thing we see is a ghost or something like that. So, for me, usually if I sense something, like let's say there was we went to Preston Castle and I was filming the investigation, and I felt in the hallway that if I didn't move out of the way, that something was going to attack me. And I was telling myself, I could be just imagining, because that does happen. You kind of creep yourself out. You're in a spooky place. You're like, you make up stuff in your head. So I just kind of quietly moved behind everybody else and didn't say anything. And then the medium who wound up in front suddenly said she saw something at the end of the hallway. And then when she approached it, it lunged at her screaming. And then that made me think, oh, wow, maybe there was something to the thing that I felt. So usually it's when somebody else corroborates what I'm feeling or sensing or whatever that I tend to believe that more.
especially if you have that personal experience with it.
Yeah.
Lisa, talk about experience if you've had any or at all.
Well,
at
okay,
all.
so I've personally never had a ghost like sighting or specific. I've had a couple of feelings I was saying before where you're in a room and you're not even alone in the room, because that's, you know, it's not about being creeped out or alone, but you're sitting there and my eyes were just drawn to the corner over and over again, and it was a beautiful old house. But I have a great story, actually. Let me preface this. This is not a ghost story. But here at the Churchward Pub, it's a beautiful old building. It was built in 1887, and it was, you know, opened during Prohibition because it used to be, what's it called? A pharmacy as well.
Oh.
So it could sell alcohol as well because that was medicinal. So it has a lot of history. I feel like there's probably spirits here. There's ghosts. I also feel like they don't have really a problem with me, so they kind of like stay away. I haven't had an experience, but I thought I did one day. It was before we remodeled, and I came in. I was one of my very first jobs when we bought the place was I took over the janitor position. Right, I had to start from the bottom. So I would come in the mornings and clean, and we had a carpet and everything. So I was like vacuuming. It was gross for a bar. But it was, you know, sun just came up because we opened at 9, so I had to be there at 8. And it was like, you know, winter, so sun's just coming up, and I'm coming in, and we had no windows in the front like we do now. And so I couldn't see out onto the street, but I could hear voices. And, you know, you'd hear things through the walls or through the front, and it's Park Streets in the morning, you hear stuff. And I'm taking the stools off of the bar, and I hear a voice, and it's pretty clear in the room, but I just kind of brush it off. And then I hear it a little bit more clear, and it's harder to brush off. And I'm like, what is that? Okay. It's totally not happening. So I pick up my stool, and I have it in my hands, and I'm about to put it down. Very clearly in the room, I hear, so we're going to breakfast? And I'm like, I look around, I'm like, what? So I look over the bar. And there, half out of the ground is a totally white man. And I couldn't decide if I, like, covered in powder. It was all, like, blurry even. And I couldn't figure out if he was real or not. And he repeats himself, so we going to breakfast? And I was like, who are you? Can I swear? I said, who the fuck are you? And he goes, oh, I'm just here to take some photos. And I was like, no, who are you? I'm like holding this. I'm about to hit you with it. He was taking photos underneath the building for the landlord, for the remodel and stuff. But I swear I was like totally thinking, this is it. This is my ghost. And when I looked at him, he looked like he was dead even. Like he was...
I think just some powder fell on him
Yeah,
somehow.
he was covered in the dirt from the underground. And he was like... But I thought, and when I tell this story, it sounds like a ghost story.
Everything's like, I'm sitting here like, oh my God.
And then I thought, oh shit, I have to attack a person now. Like, it was almost better when you were a ghost.
Well, I've had one or few experiences in my life. Because I used to live on Treasure Island. And when I was on Treasure Island, I remember I was taking a shower, and I had like a couple roommates that were like in their rooms. But I was taking a shower, and right as I stepped out of the shower, I just felt like a huge presence. And I'd never felt nothing like this in my life. And I felt as if someone was sitting on like the toilet. Like they're just sitting like the toilet's closed, but they're just sitting. Yeah. And I heard like this noise of like crying or something. And I was like, and I'm frozen. I'm literally frozen. I didn't even want to look. All I could do is I could just shout like, just whatever, just go away. Whatever it is, go away. And it felt like it went away. And I just, put my clothes on when it came out and told my roommates about it. And they're like, oh yeah, this is someone committed suicide in this room. And I'm like, oh, well, we're changing rooms. like, and they're like, and they didn't believe me at all. But I was so amped up about leaving. Then they're like, yeah, we should leave too. You know, they kind of felt it themselves. In that same room a couple months earlier, I remember feeling like a sleep paralysis in that room, and I was frozen. And I got up and went to the door, like went out and just was like, oh, I'm freaking out. Everyone's like, are you okay? Or you just kind of looks like he's on drugs. I'm like, no, I just couldn't move for like 30 minutes, and it just felt really weird. So after that, that's when I started to get into like documentaries and kind of look up like terms like sleep paralysis and other things. I thought it was really unique for me, but see, that's how I kind of jumped into the paranormal world or the interest. So that goes to my next question. How did you get started, Ying, into this, into like I want to use the term ghost hunting, but just into the world of paranormal?
Well, I mean, I grew up with ghost stories. I grew up with my mother, and she loved ghost stories, and so I grew up watching horror movies with her and all of that. So it's always kind of been part of my life.
Okay.
And then when she passed away, I suddenly really got interested in wanting to know whether life exists after death. But it wasn't until a couple years later that I was taking a video production class. I actually originally wanted just to film fun events in places around the Bay Area. So I took a video production class, and it was October, and the teacher said, why don't we propose some projects? And I thought, well, it's October, and we got to do ghost stories, right? And I just happened to see, the Alameda Paranormal Researchers in the 4th of July parade several months prior. So I was like, I even know a paranormal research group we can follow. So we did that. We're very lucky. They had an investigation set up at the USS Hornet, which is a great location to do ghost investigations, and they let us follow them. So we filmed that, and then later they went to another place, the White Horse Bar in Oakland.
Oh, awesome. One of my friends works there, and I think she, liked it when we posted that we were doing that. It makes more sense now.
So we filmed there, and it worked out so well and was so fun that we just decided to keep going. And I asked them, I was like, can I keep filming you guys? And they said, sure. So we kept filming, and then I actually started to look for locations. Just walking around, San Francisco, I'll go to historic locations, and I'll just walk in, and I'll say, hey, what's the history of this place? And after they tell me, I'll say, so are there any ghost stories here? And, lots of times they'll say, yeah, actually, we've had some things happen. So then I'll ask them, can we film here? And that's how we've been finding locations. And then later on, I invited, I'll talk about her later, June Ahern, the psychic medium, to kind of get a different viewpoint. One is the investigation team, and one is a psychic medium.
Well, that's what the next question I want to jump into is because you have kind of a team. You don't necessarily if someone just goes into a room with a camera or something oh, is there a ghost? No, you guys actually have thermal gear. You have a various. So just want to talk about some of the equipment that your team brings, because it's your crew comes and they're oh, I got this camera, I have this sound device. Just jump into that for me.
So actually, my team, it's me, I'm the producer and director, and I have 2 cameramen. We film the pictures. So my team, we have the cameras, the basic cameras, and I have a night shot camera, an IR camera. The equipment is usually used by the Alameda Paranormal Researchers. They have, the K2 meters, EMF readers, which reads electric magnetic fields. They have the special, they have all the special equipment. And a lot of it is also just filming and recording audio to see if they could find voices.
And hearing for really low pitch sounds, just because you'll record for a lot of times, and then when you go back and listen, from what I've seen on your guys' show, is you'll hear something really low, and then it sounds like a sentence or something, like a word. Yeah. But also, I've seen some of the other one of the clips was a special app, or it was a special app or application on a camera that was in one of your guys' shows that you saw a face.
Oh yeah. That was actually amazing. That actually just shocked us because we've been doing this for several years. We've never seen anything like this. Usually the stuff that you get is very, very subtle. It's a slight noise, it's people sensing shadow figures, but it's extremely hard to actually get stuff on camera. So we're at the Warfield Theater, and we're down in the dressing room area, and people are experiencing things like seeing shadow figures walking, strange orbs or lights, or not orbs, but lights, feet walking past in the hallway. But we've never actually caught anything really physical like that on camera. And then I was in front of one of the dressing rooms. There's several dressing rooms in this hallway. And I turn around, I look in this dressing room, I'm like, there's something in here. There's a heavy feeling in this dressing room. And I turn to my camera guy, Cody, I'm like, do you feel something in there? And he's like, yeah, it feels full. There's pressure pushing us out. And so he doesn't even want to walk into that room. And then Androniki, she's one of the investigators for the Alameda Paranormal Researchers. She's like, why don't you want to go in there? He's like, well, because I feel this pressure. And so she turns around and she takes a photo, and she has the FLIR app, which is a thermal camera app, on her phone. And she takes a photo, and then she's like, she says something. We turn around like, what? And she's like, look what I got. And we're just like, no, we're so astonished that my cameraman didn't have their cameras on for part of that.
Oh, yeah.
Luckily, I had my IR camera on, but I was off to the side because there's a point where she keeps taking photos and the face is still there.
Yeah, it was several times that it was like reappearing.
Yeah.
And then you guys turn the lights on. There's like nothing in that room.
There's nothing in that room because we never left. We looked in there. There's nobody in the room. And then at one point, she's holding the camera. We see the face on it. And Matthew Abai is like waving his hand in front of it. And he's like, it's live. Like the background is live, but the face is burned onto the screen. And then the face moves off on its own. She didn't like push anything.
Yeah, that would give anyone chills if you happen to see something like that. That's incredible.
Go back and watch that episode.
Yes. Oh, it was and it was showcased too. You guys happened to showcase that in a theater.
Yeah.
And I happened to see that at the California Theater. So I was like, it gave me chills up in the in the back. I was like, wow. But also another thing, language when it comes to paranormal, when it comes to ghosts and apparitions. I see some of your crew talking in different languages. I thought that was unique because I would assume if someone goes to like an old a German town place, you're just gonna go, "Is there a ghost here? Hello." But no, you guys are actually talking in the proper languages of in German. I was like, oh, I never thought of something like that. Because maybe there are misconceptions if you're trying to not necessarily provoke, but try to
Understand
communicate
each other in general, like just beyond the afterlife.
Yeah,
It might be hard just to hear each other, and then you don't even just speak the same language.
well, especially if I would assume if you're trying to talk to a spirit, or something that's in a room or a presence, you kind of think you have to communicate on their terms.
Yeah.
And
100% right.
yeah, and talking with June, let's talk about her for a second. Just introduce her and into this and how you met her.
So June Ahern, she's a psychic medium, and she's also an author. She's written several books on how to speak to spirits and her experiences. And how I met her was my mom passed away, and I was having a really hard time. And so my friend said, hey, maybe you want to talk to my aunt. She's a psychic medium. So I called her, and I left a message, and she called me back, and she said, how can I help you? And I said, well, I want to reach my mom. My mom died recently. And she actually said, nah, I don't really do that. I do seances once in a while, but I just give you general guidance. But then while she's saying this, I'm not paying her. I'm just, walking with my phone. She's like, whoa, wait, hold, your mother's coming through, and she's coming through really strong. She's coming. And I have to give you a backstory before I continue with what she says. So after my mom died, I stopped dancing. I love dancing. I stopped dancing because I was just like this. I can't dance anymore after that. And then I imagined that if I ever had a daughter, it would be my mother coming back to me through reincarnation. That's just something I was thinking to comfort myself. And one time I was in my room with my friend. She's just this, student. We were students, and she said to me, "I think your mom's around you. I see her around you." And I said, "Well, what is she doing?" And this girl says, "She has her hands around your neck." I was like, "What? Why does she have her hands around my neck?" And she said, "I don't know. Maybe she wants to take you with her." And I was like, yeah, I didn't believe her. I was like, whatever. I thought she was a little weird. So I ignored that. And then the last story was, I think the night of the day my mom died, I was just crying myself to exhaustion in bed. And I remember laying there quietly and just sticking my hand out and just imagining my mom holding my hand. I didn't feel anything. I was just imagining that to comfort myself at the time. So that's the last story. Now, going back to this telephone call, June's calling me back, and she's like, whoa, she's coming really strong. And I was like, I'm walking to my car. I'm like, well, what does she say? And she says, you got to put on your dancing shoes and you got to start dancing again. And I was
Out
like,
of nowhere.
whoa. And I was like, what else she said? She said, and your mom says if you have a daughter, it will be her born to coming back to you. And then she said, and your mom has her hands around your neck and your shoulders. And I was like, why? Why does she have her hands around my neck? And she said, because it's cold and you're not wearing a scarf and she's afraid you're going to get sick. So she's trying to protect your
That's
neck.
very sweet.
And then I was convinced and I went to see her after that. And during the reading, she got really emotional at one point. She's like, oh my God, I'm feeling a lot of emotion coming through your mom. And even her eyes were tearing up. She said, your mom says when you're sleeping in bed at night, do that thing where you stick your hand out and she'll hold your hand like she did that time.
And see, that's incredible. When it comes to mediums and people that are like sensitive like that, they have a present. I think it's really unique that they, when they talk to certain people and people are like, you don't understand. Like what she just said to me, I'm pretty sure you had the same feeling. It's like no one would never know that.
Yeah.
I think it really bridges the gap between spirituality and the paranormal experience, because even though I haven't had a paranormal experience, I feel I've had a few spiritual experiences in my life regarding feelings and emotions for lost ones, and it's really like to be able to tie that in, to have someone else validate that experience is just unbelievable.
Yeah.
And I think the power of family, that connection's so strong that, like, especially because I lost my mother as well, and it's like when that that happens, you're right there with that person. You just enact like the day after, the week after. It's just like, you know what I mean? It's going to be with you for the rest of your life. There's a lot of love and there's a lot of connections and things that still feel there. So some days you'll sit there and maybe you'll feel bad, but all of a sudden you just like feel really joy. You feel a lot of joy. You feel something and you can't describe it. And it's only you and that feeling that it's going to be hard to explain to someone, to be like, oh, no, I had an epiphany today, and I feel like there was someone pushing me to do it. And I think once we as humans cross over, we'll be that into like, oh, this is what it was. We were like people, essentially, maybe. But that's like a, I don't know, just like a generalization of a thought that possibly it could be.
I remember from my youth just always, like as a child, like thinking, what is life, and this and that, and having, I remember always thinking that when we died, we entered into a large field of energy where everything we've ever done is known, and we would then know everything. And when I got older, I learned about the concept of the collective unconscious and the Akashic records, and I realized that's exactly what my little child mind perceived on its own. So that's sort of like what I feel. But I also just, in that general connection then into spiritual paranormal experience, I think we're all energy. And so that energy can either be positive or negative, and it can leave traces on places and people and items and things, and that's where this all sort of comes from.
Well, there was definitely an interview that you guys did with a gentleman. His name eludes me right now, but he talked about positive and negative energy. Like one of the things that he said was, when you walk into a room, and in that room is a bunch of people that have negative energy, or they're just like, just like
tension.
Tension, or if they're just like moody, they're not really like being positive. That's gonna feed and affect you. Just walking in that room, just imagine that being other energies in a different room or realm that you have no control over. So if you walk into like a place that is haunted, or a place that is not necessarily haunted, but there's a lot of present energy that can go on you or stick. That was one of the terms. Same gentleman also brought up the term like a vampire. Like it's like siphons your energy and feeds off of it. Can you just talk real quick about like the positive and negative energies and some of the terminologies?
Well, I actually think that was June Ahern who said that.
Oh, June?
Yeah,
Okay.
it was June it was one of the interviews with her. That, so I definitely don't know as much as she does. I'm basically the documentary maker and film her. But she said that certain places have negative energies, what she calls vampire energies. Yeah. They basically feed off of you. I think we found some down in this building that was on 6th and Howard Street in San Francisco called the Defenestration
Administration, yes.
building. It was the abandoned building where an artist had sculptures of like couches and chairs on the wall, and it's been torn down since. But so she actually said that she didn't believe in negative energies and in vampire energies until she got attacked when she was invited to go to Jamaica and deal with some spirits. There was a family where the wife was fighting cancer. I think it was cancer, but she was fighting an illness, and for some reason they thought it was spiritual. So they invited June down to kind of get rid of these spirits, and then June actually said she felt like they were like hitting her or something. I don't know the exact details. And then she was just like, whoa, oh my God, these negative energies really, really exist. And she's also warned us as a team, be careful, because we're kind of innocent. We're just filmmakers. We're just we don't know anything about protection or.
Yeah, like what's the kind of advice that she would give you to sort of watch your back?
Well, it's interesting because when I set up the investigation at the defenestration, she actually warned us. She emailed me, or I can't remember if it was email or a voicemail, but she said, you know, you guys have to be careful. I've been meditating on this place, and there's some dark energies there, and you guys aren't prepared. So she actually did a little ritual. I think you could see it in the video. She got like holy water. I don't actually understand it myself. She knows these things much more. And she kind of protected us. Okay. She also says she kind of closed our third eye, our psychic ability, because we could be opening ourselves up too much. So she tried to close it a little bit. Otherwise, you know, opinions vary. Like I've heard people say, imagine a white light protecting you, like a shield around you. And then on the opposite end of the spectrum, I've talked to some people in the field, in the parapsychology and paranormal field, who say there's no evil spirits, there are no demons. It's just Hollywood's making that up. That yes, maybe they're jerks, maybe there's some that are just were bad people and they're bad energies, you know. But that other stuff, they don't believe in the evil stuff. So I don't know. Yeah.
Well, when I think of ghosts and spirits, also I also think of like this, you know, being skeptical. Because for many years I was skeptical. I think everyone is at a certain point, even if like when you're a kid, you know, like I don't believe. But if your parents, you know, tell you like a ghost story or something, then you're like, But just talk about that because I was skeptical for a long time. But then when I had those, it kind of shook up. But I think that's also a good thing to be skeptical for, you know what I mean? Because then once that illusion, or not illusion, but when that when it's broken, you're like, oh my God, I had an experience myself. What do I do with this now? Talk about both, Lisa, you?
Well, again, like I haven't had that experience. But when I was very little, born, my parents first moved into this house in Oakland on Stacy Street. I think that. Eleanor was one of those. I think Eleanor. But it's up in the Oakland Hills. And, you know, they're a young couple in the early 80s. And they bought this house. And there was a room that was boarded up downstairs. And I remember crawling into a space underneath this house. Because we lived there until I was 5. And that's when we moved out. But they got really upset when I crawled into that space, and I was like, what's the problem? They're like, you don't understand, you don't know. And they tell me later, like you're saying, your parents tell you these stories. When they first moved into this house, they broke down a wall that was in the basement, and they found all of these pentagrams painted in animals' blood with
God.
like carcasses of the animals, and obviously this was a room for rituals. Luckily, my mother's uncle was a priest. So, I mean, and this is like a young couple. They bought the house. Exactly. I mean, this is a deal breaker, absolute deal breaker. But, you know, they're young. They can't get out. They already own this house. And apparently it was even more than that. It had been used like a kind of a drug den. Because for the first month afterwards, people were like banging on the doors, screaming. Maybe a little bit of prostitution going on in this house. And it was like, in this suburban area, totally out of the blue. But yeah, and then my parents, they used to tell me, because we moved out when I was 5, but they would say there was like some freaky stuff that happened in that house.
What about Ying? Basically, like on the starting of like being skeptical when you walk in, and then also with your career now, you know, do you still carry some of that with you, or is it something that's been like when you go on these events, it's like it's proven like no, I felt this, you know, I felt this presence. It's something that shakes up the roots of being someone that's kind of like, I don't know if maybe there is.
Yeah, like I went in more like wanting to believe, but really actually not. Deep core of myself didn't really believe this was possible. It's a kind of a weird way to explain it, but it was. I wanted to believe because it was fun and spooky, basically, right? It's cool. But when stuff actually really happened, then it was like this kind of like I would describe them almost like a shock. Like, you mean this is real? You know? And I've even had experiences where my legs went weak because it freaked me out a little bit. It was it actually did scare me. But we do have to maintain a balance between believing and being skeptical, because a lot of times what looks like is paranormal evidence could be something else. So,
Very true.
you know, because if you want to be credible, especially, you know, the investigation team, they do allow debunking. And we film them, and if we catch something, we also try to debunk it too, because sometimes there are rational explanations, like orbs, sometimes they're dust, or reflections off of things, or, you know, there's different explanations for orbs. They're not always spiritual.
Insects and
Yeah, it could be insects, it could
light
be
flares.
Yeah, exactly. And I actually also heard a funny story where this family was convinced. I mean, they were like hearing knocks. They were like actually having major things like from a horror movie happening to them. And they thought they had a bona fide haunted house. But then they found out that they had too much carbon monoxide buildup. And that was causing hallucinations.
Oh,
my,
yeah.
that's not good.
So you have to make sure that's not the issue. And sometimes windows will pop open suddenly because of some unevenness in the frame or in the floorboards or some weird. So you do have to keep those things in mind.
Yeah.
And what they do, sometimes they use the EMF meter to make sure that there's not too much of an electromagnetic field, because that can influence things. I don't really know the details, but so it's a weird balance. And there are occasions where I'm like, we don't know how to debunk this. Like the photo of that man's face in the Warfield.
That was from what I saw on that. I was like generally, especially watching that, like, that's unique. That's really. And then you guys actually contacted the company.
Yeah.
And actually was like, hey, does this happen normally? What's going on? And the company's like,
actually APR contacted the company.
yes.
So APR, the Alameda Paranormal Research, they contacted the company, and the company couldn't explain it, which is funny because I think how they did it was first they say, well, how do you explain the color palette? Because the face is freezing cold, and the background, the way, so
The hand that goes past it is like registered as warm.
it's warm. Like people who are alive, who have
Yeah.
heat, come out orange
So
and
why
bright
is
colors.
like a face?
This face is dark purple, which means it's cold in the background compared to the background, which is warm, which is highly unusual. And APR, they actually tried to reverse the colors after taking a picture of a person, and they couldn't get the same results. And so the company just says, we don't know, it's probably the color palettes, but it wasn't really a good explanation. And I think Summer, the leader, actually then said, there was no one in the room. How do you explain that? And I think they didn't answer that question.
Yeah. I think all this is very interesting. I think just ghosts in general is something that's, especially for a long time in history, has been kind of brought up, talked about. So I think it's very unique that, you know, to have experience or be a part of something. So that's why I want to start talking about the tours right now, and what you do with the tours that you want to go ahead and talk about real quick, and I'll just hold this up. And
So I pay for all the videos and everything out of pocket. We don't make any money from them. So I wanted to find a way to raise funds so that I could feed the crew and pay for transportation, maybe, you know, get better equipment. And so I just decided, you know, I'm going to take people in, to several places where we filmed paranormal investigations, and give them a chance to see if they can find anything. And I also do, talk about the history of those areas in San Francisco. So it's kind of a combination of ghost tour and ghost hunt.
Yeah.
Which is, I don't think I've come across anything like it, because I've been on ghost tours and they're fun and they're interesting, but it's a lot of walking around outside and pointing to buildings, but
Talking about
Yeah.
ghost stories
Yeah.
instead of like feeling the experience.
so I'm trying to combine the two, and it's just a way to raise funds. So
Oh, that's
yeah.
good though. I mean, you're combining kind of like a visual experience, but also you're kind of invoking kind of like because on some of the shows I've seen, you guys are asking questions and you're trying to. Well, I use the word provoke because there's one episode where two ladies were like, like we'd known this ghost likes to harm people or touch people, so go ahead and touch me. Let's see if it and then all of a sudden she just felt like a whip around her neck and she just got chills. And the next you know, the other girl's like, "Let's do it again." She's like, "I don't, like I don't know," but she did it again and she felt it, and you can see it on people's faces,
Their
not
reaction.
only on your show but other shows that I've seen, that people just get chills and they run and or they're like this. Yeah, like when it gets too real, then it's like I don't know. It's like and imagine going to.
That's why I
The
said I
hunt,
was
yeah.
like, I don't know. Earlier, I'm like, oh, I'm scared.
We're gonna have to call Colin, and he's gonna have to
Yeah.
drag you.
Oh, I think it's me dragging him for sure to this one.
We actually had some intense things happen on the tour that I did not expect, because I really thought, not everyone's psychic medium, not everyone's gonna. I was actually afraid it'd be boring, to be honest, because I was afraid people are going to expect it to be like the movie Poltergeist or something, and we go in and nothing happens. We're sitting in the dark and just like waiting for something and nothing happens, which is how it is most of the time, to be honest. But I took them into this theater in Chinatown, which is a very historic theater. And it was opened, I think, in 1925 for the Chinese community to listen to Chinese opera or Cantonese opera. And so, we go in, and the backstory is I had felt a female spirit in this theater when I went to Usher for a musical. I wasn't even looking for a ghost. And I had a feeling it was an Asian woman, female spirit, and she may have been trafficked and terribly violated, maybe commit suicide. That's the backstory. And several other people corroborated what I saw in my mind's eye. Some people actually saw what I saw in my mind's eye. So that's the backstory. So we go into this theater with the tour group. We're split up into two groups. One group was with me. I'm in the auditorium. And my cameraman, Cody, takes the other group down into the women's bathroom, which is where I felt the female spirit. And so I'm in the auditorium, and suddenly I hear someone shouting in Cantonese, a woman, or it sounds like Cantonese. And everyone's head turns. I could see everyone, what was that? So I take the flashlight, and I'm like, there's nobody in our group that speaks Chinese, Mm-hmm. But I didn't see anybody, so I thought, well, we're in Chinatown. Maybe the way the acoustics works, even though it sounded like it was indoors, maybe somebody outside really shouted and it sounded like it was indoors. So I just kind of dismissed it, okay, whatever. But then one of the guests came up to me, the one who was in the group in the bathroom, and she's like, hey, one of the women, she was down in the bathroom and she ran out of the bathroom, and she's this middle-aged white lady. She said the woman said she was attacked by a spirit in the bathroom. And she ran out, and she said she felt like a spirit was trying to jump into her to speak through her. And I was actually caught off guard because I'm the tour leader, and I'm just like, holy crap, I did not expect
Like,
this
how
to
to
happen.
deal with that?
Deal with
yeah.
that, yeah.
And then I was thinking, okay, maybe it's just psychological, whatever. Maybe it's a coincidence. I thought I heard someone shouting Cantonese because we're in Chinatown. But then Cody had been recording, my cameraman. And so I listened to the recording, and it sounds like, first you hear, it almost sounds like a conversation among two women in some kind of southern Chinese dialect, like Cantonese or some area, some dialect related to Cantonese, and you hear this like the way the intonation and stuff is totally Chinese, but we can't make out exactly what she's saying. It's just like like that. I'm like, wait, And then later on, she like runs out of the bathroom, and then you could hear her saying words that sound like Chinese. And we're still trying to figure out what she's saying, because I don't think it's Cantonese. I've played it for several Cantonese speakers. We have to find. I actually listened to it, and I was like, it sounds like some kind of southern dialect that I don't recognize. And so then we asked the woman, have you ever taken Chinese lessons? She's like, no. I'm like, well, what did you say? Like, what was happening? And she doesn't remember saying that.
Anything.
And I asked, she's actually a friend of June, the medium. And I trust June a lot. And I asked June later, I'm like, has your friend ever studied Chinese? She's like, no, I've known her for 30 years. And I asked her, like, does she sometimes imagine things? You know, because you never know. And she's like, no, I've known her for 30 years. She's stable. She's not.
Sound of mind.
Yeah. So that was more intense than what I expected. And then some people got pushed.
May I ask,
Yeah.
how many people usually go on the tour at a time?
The first time I think I had, the most I've ever had was like about 12 or 13. I'm trying, if I do them again, my last tour will be December 17th, Sunday, December 17th. And that theater is actually closing the end of January. So I don't know if I'll ever be able to take people in there again. But I'm trying to limit it to 8 or 9, because I can't always have someone help me. And it's also a better experience when
With
it's
less.
fewer people,
Yeah.
because we're going into some rooms and that, you know. I don't want to be too cramped and stuff. So
I mean, even just breathing, you know, it's like the less people
yeah,
the experience probably.
yeah.
Yeah. Also, just real quick, when you go on these tours, if anyone else is watching that likes going to, like, 'cause some people like to, you know, make amateur videos, and they go to like abandoned places. Like, just be careful, just in general, because even if you go, like you're saying, like, how would you even protect yourself? You know, your spirit, or, you know, your body, because like if it's something that you believe like wholeheartedly, and you want to be careful of things like that, you could walk into an area.
You know who I always think about is the graffiti artists. I'm like, they're in there probably. That has to be a brave person.
Yeah.
Yeah, because okay, so I'm a fan of like Ghost Adventures and all those kinds of shows, and as real or fake as people want to believe these experiences, or I believe the experiences are real. Shows become more produced over time. It's harder. I really enjoy that show in particular, but the thing that I always think about, no matter what, if you believe that the experiences are real, these people are brave people.
Yes.
To go into a dark room, isolated by yourself, thinking about the scary things.
In the dark, with like just a sound recorder,
Yeah.
listening for something to. It's like that blows my mind.
I
Because
love-
I don't. Yeah.
I love when people are like, "Oh, it was just a spider or a rat." I'm still scared of the spider and the rats.
But those same people, you can. Those are the same people you can like drag. Like, oh no, come with me to go, and they're like, no, I'm good. I'm good. But I thought there was no. There was no ghost. You know, is that right? But of course, even when you go there, I think one of the best things you could do is take yourself, go to a place like that. Because I know, like the USS Hornet in certain places, or the Warfield. The Warfield, if you just stand in there, any place like that by yourself, and just kind of just zone in and just kind of like let like everything around you, especially if you're at your own house or something, like, okay, but when you go somewhere like and you feel that,
the energies.
and then that's when it clicks to your brain. What do I do with this information? How do I understand this like possibility of something that I can't perceive or know, but there's a feeling that's letting you know there are more, more energies that you can, understand. That's always kind of like, that's what got me more into after I had my own personal experiences. It's like, you know what? I may be skeptical, but there's a lot of this that like, wait a second, I had that moment. I felt that. I literally could not like describe and tell someone that like, yes, I believe there's something out there because I felt it and I was horrified. And and at the time I was like still like I was like 19, and I was like, man, bro, man, don't gonna scare me, But at the same time, why am I out of my room late night, not going back to my room? People are looking at me like, dude, it's dormitory, it's time to go to. I'm like, nah, man, you don't know what just happened. You have no clue. So when you have moments like that, that's where you kind of look at yourself like, yeah, I think there's something out there. I can't put my finger on it, But I think that's one good way for people to kind of jump out of themselves and go to a tour and, kind of just, have an experience. Even if they don't feel nothing, just, have a good night out, do something different. I think it's fun. I think I'm going to try it. I'm going to bring Sam and Sage. I think they would enjoy it.
Have you ever been on a tour, Sam? No.
Sam has not been on a tour, but we're going to have to drag him to it. I think I'm going to go, but I'm going to be like really reluctant. Like, I'm going to be the one crying on the show. I'm going to be the one like, shut up, we're trying to hear the ghost. No, I don't think I can do it. the whole show, I think.
Yeah. Well, right now I'm trying to figure out if I can do any more after December 17th. So
yeah. Well, also
you'll be able to find new locations too. I think. Yeah. People, I mean, it's hard, definitely, but this idea of haunted locations has become more popular. It used to be the idea of like covering it up, but now people are so intrigued and popularity of groups like the Alameda group. What's it called again?
Alameda Paranormal Researchers.
Yeah, it's awesome that there's groups out there. I always. Some of my favorite episodes of the shows that I've watched are the ones where, they go to these big haunted locations, but then I think about those individual families who live in these homes. You've bought a home, and now your home is terrorizing you.
And they leave, yeah.
It's like also a little bit of a guilt just pawning it off to the next person to buy. It's a vicious cycle. So I'm like, I always am more intrigued because I feel like that's probably something that happens more often that people ignore, or they become affected, and maybe marriages and relationships.
Also, it's very hard or very difficult to talk about because in my experience, I can talk to a lot of people, but they might just go, I don't believe you, or they'll go, okay, But generally, just talking about it is very difficult.
Definitely.
And you have to be careful who you talk to about this stuff.
Yes.
And the frustrating thing about this is, we've been filming this for several years, and if we don't come up with anything very convincing, like a photo or something on camera, then a lot of people will be like, you guys, there's nothing to this, right? Mm-hmm. When you do get something convincing, like that photo, and people are like, well, you must have faked it.
Yeah, I think it's definitely an uphill battle.
Yeah,
but I've watched the episodes. I enjoy the content. Bringing that up, I want to see what's new in the future. Yeah, just talk about a few things. You don't have to talk about in detail if it's like some secrets or something that you guys are planning, but just talk about the Haunted Bay and what you expressing for like the next year.
We've heard about a lot of locations. People have recommended locations for us. So basically, it's just me I have to go and see if I can get in and get an investigation set up so that we can film them. The next investigation will be at the Oddfellows building in San Francisco.
When are you doing that one?
We're going actually this Sunday with the APR, Alameda Paranormal Researchers, and then we're going to follow up on the 16th with June Ahern. And we do it separately because we don't want them influencing each other. We make sure that we don't tell each other what happened on the other investigations.
Yeah. So also another thing, like I was saying with the uphill battle, you guys are very, I think, honest and truthful with what you're doing, because even I brought up, being skeptical and things like that, and you're like, yeah, well, you kind of have to balance it, and also talking with June, that's one thing I would assume where people would bring a medium and they would withhold information and just be blown away when they're like, oh, no, this, and this. And you're just like, oh, my God, we have to get more of this lady. We got to talk more, And she's, like I said, she went to Jamaica. I'm pretty sure she's gone all over the place teaching and learning, as she goes. So I think that's really incredible that someone, that's right there with you.
I think there's more skepticism nowadays. In the modern age, we look at that as, not validated, not real. But I mean, these practices, these understandings have been around long before in many different cultures, and it wasn't thought of as ridiculous to think, oh, there's a spirit, there's a ghost, I'm communicating with the beyond. It's only modern minds that are like, that's wrong, that's not true, prove it.
Well, there's actually I had an interesting conversation with do you guys know Lloyd Auerbach? No, so he's a very well-known parapsychologist. Like, he actually has taught classes in parapsychology. at John F. Kennedy University when they had a paranormal or parapsychology department. And right now he's still teaching classes in Lafayette. So he's actually coming it from a more academic viewpoint. And he's actually fascinating. I have a couple of videos where he explains what ghosts are, where he explains, whether ghosts can travel or not, because that's one of the things people ask. And because he's very academic and not trying to be sensationalist, it's actually fascinating when he tells stories that are like just amazing.
What was his opinion on whether they could travel?
Oh, they can travel. But now I just lost my thought. I don't know why I brought him up, but what were we saying?
Oh, I was saying like the ancient world.
Okay, right. So he was talking about how there was a time when the scientific community and academic community was actually more open to this kind of actually doing experiments with psychics, during the Cold War. And I think he wrote a book on that. During the Cold War and during even, I think, the 70s and 80s, it was easier to get funding to actually do this as real research. But then he describes what's called the rise of the skeptics, where they will actually attack people who even try to do research. Even if they're like well-known academic professors. I think there was I don't know which professor it was, but it was like a Yale or Harvard, like some major university.
Well, I remember there was a world famous psychic that the government would like talk to her, and she would actually like solve like documented accounts for the government, and she did this for several years. I remember seeing that. A documentary, and she was talking about, yes, the government always calls on me to look up and find, and then like a lost child or things like that. And not only the government, but the military was like, oh yeah, we branch out to her. And I'm like, well, that's kind of unique, but if she's like proving these things right and she's, helping us, like, that's incredible, So I remember, I forget her name, but I have to look her up and post it up on the page for everyone can see.
Yeah, but he was saying that there's definitely an aggressive rise of the skeptics where they try to shut down any kind of real research because they think it's stupid, it's ridiculous. And he's just saying that it makes it actually, it's almost like for them science is a religion because they won't even look at academic papers.
It's like,
they try to prove that they go, I'm not going to read it because it's stupid, it's nonsense. So it's dogmatic.
There's dogmaticness on both sides,
Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's almost the show right now. I'd like to thank Ying and my co-host Lisa.
I've had a great time.
No, you guys had definitely fun, and just talk real quick about the tours and just your links and websites to go to and where they can find you.
Okay, so we are The Haunted Bay on YouTube. Just go youtube.com/The Haunted Bay. And we're also on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, always, / or @ The Haunted Bay. The tours, I've just done a few of them just to raise funds. It's still in the air whether I'm going to do it as a regular thing or just once in a while to raise funds. Depends if I have access to places again and if there's interest out there. But you can go on our Facebook page and you'll see updates. If I do another one, you'll see information on that. Right now, we have one more tour left. And that is on December 17th on Sunday. And I think we have maybe 1 or 2 slots left. But
book now, people.
Yeah, but of course, my main thing is filming paranormal investigations, is not the tours. I don't want people to think that, I'm like a showman doing tours and then making up investigations to lead to tours. That's just a side thing that I'm doing so that I could at least feed my crew and maybe get better like cameras or mics or something.
And you definitely need everything helps, especially when you have a crew and you have equipment. I just I spent too much money on my equipment myself, so I understand for DSLRs, video cameras, because technology is always moving forward. So I also believe that in the same realm of like, okay, well, new equipment comes out, like it benefits us, it benefits the crew, so that's something to look forward to. And Lisa.
Oh, yes. So, the Churchward Pub is always rocking. We have good parties on the weekends, but I'm really excited because we're bringing back karaoke on Tuesday nights.
Oh, nice.
Starting December 12th, which is a week from tomorrow. And I'm working really hard on that. It's going to be awesome. I'm making Christmas cookies and hot cocoa and eggnog, and I promise I will sing at least one Christmas carol, but otherwise I don't karaoke, so maybe it is a gift on both sides that I don't.
Well, there you go. Like I said, tomorrow I'll be working with the BACT, the Bay Area Children's Theater, because I work with them, and I also work with another company. So it's going to be unique. They're putting on like a lot of shows. I actually today I was helping Walnut Creek's Lesher Theater, and they're putting on a grand show called Christmas Carol. But it's it has like 2 spiral staircases on the set. It has a walkway, and it was every year it takes at least a full week of loading in 4 trucks to get everything on stage, and then loading and erecting it, and then having all the actors practice and everything on it. It's a beautiful set. It's in Walnut Creek. It's at the Lesher Theater. You should go to leshertheater.com, but Homer recently was there, and he put a performance on one of the stages. Him and his it was like a dance troupe, and he but it was like for like his culture. It was like a very beautiful thing. I saw the photos of it, and I'm like, oh, I work there. So I thought that was shout out to Homer and all his talent and positive energy. He has a lot of even just from his photos. I'm like, man, I feel good just looking at this guy just go out and just walk around and have fun. So, but that was our shouts and plugs. We're gonna pretty much wrap up the show now. I'd like to thank my co-host Lisa Church Ward.
Thank you, Alex.
And our special guest from the Haunted Bay, the creator, Ying Liu.
Thank you.
And my name's Alex, and I hopefully you guys had a great time watching the show tonight, me hosting. So thank you and good night.